This wasn't supposed to happen. Not to him. Not like this. Because when 50 Cent decided to tease a new segment from his upcoming documentary, he thought he was in control of the narrative. He thought he was the one exposing secrets. But what happened next? Flipped everything, overnight. Because just hours after that leak went live, something disturbing started circulating behind the scenes. At first it was whispers, then messages, then a clip. Short, chaotic, hard to watch. And suddenly the story wasn't about a documentary anymore, it was about an attack. According to early reports, 50 Cent was allegedly robbed and beaten in what insiders are calling a targeted incident. Not random, not accidental, targeted. And the timing, way too perfect to ignore. Because the footage he leaked was already causing tension. We're talking about a documentary segment that supposedly exposed names, connections, and moments that certain people didn't want public. People with influence, people with power, people who don't like being exposed. So when that clip dropped, it didn't just go viral, it triggered something fast, something aggressive. And before anyone could even process what was happening, the situation escalated badly. Now the internet is asking one question. Was this a coincidence? Or was this retaliation? Because insiders are now claiming that what happened to 50 Cent might not have been about robbery at all. It might have been a message, a warning, and if that's true, then this story isn't just shocking, it's dangerous. And trust me, what's starting to come out right now is only the beginning. To understand why this situation feels so explosive, so calculated, and honestly so unsettling, you have to look at the pattern. Because if you've followed 50 Cent over the years, you already know one thing. He doesn't just make content, he exposes people again and again and again. From calling out industry insiders, to putting personal business on blast, to producing shows that blur the line between entertainment and real-life drama. 50 Cent has built an entire reputation on one thing: fearlessness. Or at least, that's how it looks from the outside. But behind that fearless image, there's always been tension. Quiet at times, loud at others. And sometimes, dangerously close to boiling over. Because when you constantly speak on people's secrets, eventually, someone doesn't like it. Now here's where things start connecting to what just happened. Over the past few months, insiders have been hinting that 50 Cent was working on something different. Not just another series, not just another project, but a documentary. One that was rumored to go deeper than anything he's done before. We're talking about alleged behind-the-scenes stories, industry politics, unresolved conflicts, and moments that were never supposed to be public. At first, people didn't take it seriously because rumors like that, they happen all the time. But then 50 started teasing it, subtly, dropping cryptic posts, posting old clips with captions like, "They thought this was over, it's not." And truth always finds its way out. Fans started noticing a pattern. Something was coming, and whatever it was, it wasn't going to be quiet. Then came the leak. And this is where everything changes. Because instead of waiting for an official release, instead of building hype the usual way, 50 Cent allegedly dropped a snippet. Unannounced, no warning, just a clip. And according to people who claim they saw it before it was taken down, it wasn't just promotional, it was provocative. The clip reportedly included references to past conflicts, blurred footage of private moments, and what some are calling coded callouts aimed at specific individuals in the industry. Nothing fully confirmed, nothing directly named, but enough for people to start connecting dots. And once those dots started connecting, the tension began building. Fast. Because fans weren't the only ones watching. People behind the scenes were watching too. And according to multiple sources, not everyone was happy. In fact, some were furious. Now here's the part that makes this even more intense. Because this isn't the first time 50 Cent has stirred things up. He's had public feuds, very public ones. We're talking about long-running back and forth, subtle jabs, and moments where things got uncomfortably personal. Names have been dragged, situations exposed, and reputations tested. But this felt different. Because this time, it wasn't just a post. It wasn't just a comment. It was a project. A full piece of content that could potentially reach millions. Maybe even reshape narratives people thought were buried. And once that idea started spreading, so did the concern. Because if there's one thing the industry doesn't like, it's losing control of the story. Now let's talk about the timing, because this is where things get suspicious. The leak happened late, quietly, almost like it wasn't meant to stay up long, and within hours, it was gone, removed, deleted. But not before enough people saw it. Not before enough people screen recorded it. Not before enough people started talking. And once that conversation started, it didn't stop. Forums lit up. Group chats exploded. People began speculating about who the clip was referencing, what it meant, and more importantly, why 50 Cent would release something like that now. Some said it was strategic, others said it was reckless. But a few insiders, they said it was provoking something. And that's where things take a darker turn. Because according to one source, there were already warnings, quiet ones, behind the scenes, messages sent, not public, not traceable, but clear enough. You know, the kind of messages that don't need to be explained, the kind that say, stop. But if there's one thing people know about 50 Cent, he doesn't stop. And maybe that's exactly what led to what happened next, because just hours after that clip started making its rounds, something shifted. Communication went quiet. Posts slowed down, and then the reports started coming in. At first, they were scattered, unconfirmed, easy to dismiss. But then they started lining up. Same details, same timeline, same claim. That 50 Cent had been approached, confronted, and what started as an interaction escalated fast. Now nobody knows exactly where it happened. Some say it was outside a private location. Others claim it was near a studio. A few even suggest it was during a short window where he was briefly alone. But one detail keeps repeating across every version of the story. It wasn't random, and it wasn't just about taking something. Because while early reports mention items being stolen, there's something else they all point to. Something more serious, more personal. They say it turned physical. Quickly, unexpectedly. And by the time it was over, the message had already been sent. Now here's the part that has everyone on edge. Because since that moment, things have gone quiet. Too quiet. No immediate statement, no detailed update. Just fragments, leaks, and speculation. And the longer that silence continues, the more people start asking what really happened. And more importantly, what was in that documentary clip that could trigger something like this? Because if that leak really did set this off, then whatever 50 Cent is working on, might be way bigger and way more dangerous than anyone thought. And trust me, the next part of this story is where everything starts to unravel. The moment the first clear details started leaking out, the story stopped being speculation and turned into something much more serious. Because this wasn't just something happened anymore. This was a full incident, and the more people dug into it, the more intense it became. According to multiple overlapping reports, 50 Cent was allegedly approached late at night in what was supposed to be a routine, low-key moment. No cameras, no crowd, no attention. Just a short window where he wasn't surrounded by his usual team. And that's when it happened. At first, witnesses describe it as an interaction. Not aggressive, not loud, just unexpected. A group closing in, words being exchanged. And then something shifted. Fast. Because within seconds, what started as a confrontation allegedly turned physical. No warning, no buildup, just impact. Now here's where the story gets even more intense. Because early rumors made it sound like a simple robbery. But that version started falling apart almost immediately. Why? Because of what was and wasn't taken. According to insiders, some personal items were reportedly missing, but not the ones you'd expect. Not the obvious valuables, not the high-profile items someone would normally target in a random robbery. Instead, it was specific, targeted, almost like whoever did this knew exactly what they were looking for. And that's when people started connecting it back to the documentary, because just hours before this incident, 50 Cent had allegedly leaked that clip. And inside that clip, there were hints, references, moments that pointed towards something bigger, something people weren't supposed to see yet. So now the question changed. This wasn't about, why did this happen? It became, what were they trying to get? And that's when the first major twist dropped. Because according to one source close to the situation, the attackers weren't just trying to take physical items, they were allegedly asking about something. Something very specific, a drive. Let that sink in. Not money, not jewelry. A drive. Now we don't know exactly what was on it, but given the timing, given the documentary, given the leak, it doesn't take much to guess. Because if 50 Cent really has been working on a project exposing behind-the-scenes information, then a drive could mean one thing: footage. Unreleased footage. A raw material. Content that hasn't been edited, filtered, or controlled. And if that's what they were after, then this wasn't just an attack, it was a mission. Now here's where things get even more unsettling, because according to another insider, the situation didn't end the way people think. Yes, there was a confrontation. Yes, it turned physical. But what happened after that? That's where the story splits. Some reports claim 50 Cent managed to hold his ground long enough for the situation to break apart. Others say it ended abruptly, like something interrupted it. But the most disturbing version says that the attackers left without getting what they came for. And if that's true, then this story isn't over. Not even close. Because if they were really after something that important, they're not just going to walk away. Now let's talk about what happened next, because this is where the internet truly lost control of the narrative. Within hours of the incident being reported, a second leak surfaced, but this time, it wasn't from the documentary, it was from the incident itself. A short clip, clearly taken from a distance, showing what appears to be a chaotic moment in a dimly lit area. Figures moving quickly, voices overlapping, and then a frame where someone who looks like 50 Cent is seen stumbling backward. The clip cuts almost instantly. But that single moment was enough. Because now, people weren't just hearing about it. They were seeing it. And once that clip hit social media, everything escalated. Again, people started analyzing it frame by frame, zooming in, enhancing brightness, trying to confirm what exactly they were looking at. Was it really him? Was it staged? Was it edited? The debates exploded. But here's the problem. No one could fully debunk it, and no one could fully confirm it either, which made it even more powerful, because uncertainty creates attention, and attention creates pressure. Now here's where the first twist takes a darker turn, because while everyone was focused on the footage, a new detail surfaced, quietly, but it spread fast. According to a source claiming to have seen the original leaked documentary clip before it was removed, there was a moment in it that hasn't been talked about enough, a moment that might explain everything. They claim that in the background of one scene, there was a voice, distorted, unclear, but recognizable to the right people. A voice tied to someone, with influence. And if that voice really is who people think it is, then this isn't just about 50 Cent exposing random stories. This could involve someone who does not want their name anywhere near this project. Now suddenly, the stakes change. Because this isn't just about content anymore, it's about power, reputation, control, and possibly damage that can't be undone. But just when it felt like things couldn't get more intense, they did. Because late into the night, a message started circulating. No source, no confirmation, just a screenshot. But the content was chilling. It allegedly shows a message sent to someone in 50 Cent circles saying, "Tell him to stop before it gets worse." No name, no context. But the timing, right after the incident, and right after the leak. Now, whether that message is real or not, it doesn't even matter at this point, because the narrative has already shifted. People aren't asking if this is connected anymore. They're asking how deep it goes. Because if that attack really was about the documentary, and if the people involved are still out there, then this isn't just a one-time situation. This is ongoing. And whatever 50 Cent has in his possession right now might be more valuable and more dangerous than anyone realizes. But here's the twist nobody expected. Because while all of this chaos is happening, while the internet is exploding, theories are spreading, and tension is rising. There's one thing 50 Cent hasn't done. He hasn't said a word, no post, no response, no denial, nothing. And that silence is starting to feel intentional because people who know him know one thing. He doesn't stay quiet unless he's planning something. And if that's true, then what comes next might not just respond to the situation. It might blow it wide open. Silence can be louder than any statement. And right now, 50 Cent isn't just quiet. He's completely absent. No clarification, no reassurance, no denial of the incident. And in situations like this, that kind of silence doesn't calm things down. It makes everything worse. Because the internet doesn't wait, it fills in the gaps, and within hours of the initial reports, new layers of speculation began forming at a rapid pace. Was the attack connected to the documentary? Was it a warning, or was it something even bigger? Something being intentionally hidden. Then came the first escalation, a new leak. Different from the earlier clip. Shorter, but far more revealing in tone. It wasn't footage from the documentary this time. It was audio. And if the claims surrounding it are true, it captures a conversation allegedly tied to the aftermath of the incident. The audio is distorted, partially unclear, but certain phrases stand out enough to send shockwaves through listeners. Words like, "He wasn't supposed to drop that. We told them to wait. Now everything's exposed." Those fragments alone were enough to ignite chaos online, because now the narrative wasn't just about a random attack. It sounded coordinated, intentional, almost like a reaction to something that wasn't meant to go public yet. And that's when the conversation shifted again. People started asking, was the leak of the documentary clip actually the trigger? Or was the incident already planned, waiting for the right moment? Meanwhile, social media exploded with theories. Our threads began mapping timelines. Leak drops. Reactions begin. Incident occurs shortly after silence from 50 Cent to many. That sequence didn't feel random. It felt connected, almost too connected. Then influencers started weighing in, some cautiously, some boldly. One commentary creator went live and said, "If this is retaliation, then this is one of the most serious situations we've seen tied to content leaks in a long time." Another added, "This isn't just about a documentary anymore. This is about what happens when unreleased material threatens the wrong people." And that statement stuck, because it reframed the entire situation. This wasn't just entertainment. This wasn't just exposure. This was something that may have crossed into real-world consequences. Now here's where things escalate further. Or not, because shortly after the audio leak began circulating, another piece of information surfaced, this time from a different source entirely, a supposed industry insider claiming familiarity with the documentary project. According to this source, the documentary wasn't just general storytelling. It allegedly contained segments that reference specific individuals and events that have remained unaddressed publicly. Not just vague mentions, not just general commentary, but identifiable moments. Situations that, if revealed in full context, could reshape public perception of certain people or events. And that's when the stakes become clearer, because if a project like that exists, then controlling its release becomes extremely important to those who may be mentioned. Now combine that with the alleged leak, and suddenly, the urgency around the incident begins to make more sense. But here's the most controversial claim that emerged during this wave of discussion. A second insider allegedly stated that prior to the incident, there had already been attempts to intervene in the release of the documentary content. No official confirmation, no named individuals, just claims that conversations were happening behind closed doors, requests being made, warnings being issued, but none of it publicly acknowledged. And if true, then the situation may have been building long before anything ever reached the internet. Now let's talk about public reaction, because by this point, the online environment had fully transformed. What started as curiosity turned into analysis, and then into concern. People weren't just reacting to clips anymore. They were connecting patterns, studying behavior, trying to understand motive. And in the process, the discussion became far more serious than anyone anticipated. Some users began asking whether releasing sensitive or revealing content could unintentionally provoke real-world consequences. Others argued that creators shouldn't feel threatened for producing documentaries at all. The debate became split. Freedom of expression versus potential backlash, and neither side was backing down. Meanwhile, discussion forums filled with breakdowns of the timeline, attempting to piece together what happened minute by minute. But despite all the theories, one thing remained unclear. What exactly was on that documentary clip that triggered such a rapid escalation? Because the incident didn't happen days later. It happened almost immediately after the leak. That timing alone continues to fuel suspicion. Now, another unexpected development added even more complexity. A message began circulating online that appeared to come from someone claiming affiliation with the project's production circle. The message stated, "This isn't the full version. The real content hasn't even been touched yet." If that statement is genuine, then what the public has seen so far may be only a fraction of what exists. And that possibility alone changes everything. Because if partial content caused this level of reaction, what happens when the complete material surfaces? Would the response escalate further, or would it finally bring clarity? At this point, even analysts are cautious about predicting what comes next, because every time a new detail emerges, it shifts the direction of the narrative again. And that unpredictability is what makes this situation so unusual. Nothing has stabilized, nothing has been confirmed fully, and no central authority has stepped in to clarify the core facts, which leaves the internet in a constant loop of speculation, reaction, and reinterpretation. And through it all, the silence from 50 Cent remains the most powerful signal of all, because whether intentional or not, it suggests that the story is not finished, not even close. And based on everything that's surfaced so far, it may only be a matter of time before the next development changes the direction of this entire situation again. As the silence continues, the reaction outside is reaching a boiling point, because now this isn't just a rumor circulating in corners of the internet, it's a global conversation. He's centered around 50 Cent, and the shocking claims surrounding the alleged robbery and beating incident tied to his leaked documentary content. And the public is completely divided. On one side, you have supporters who refuse to believe the narrative at face value. They argue that 50 Cent has always been a controversial figure, someone who pushes boundaries, someone who attracts attention simply because of his influence. To them, this incident feels suspicious, almost too convenient. They question the timing, they question the lack of clarity, and most importantly, they question why something this serious still hasn't been officially addressed in detail. Why is everything coming from leaks instead of official statements? Something doesn't add up here. If this really happened, Why are there so many unanswered questions? These voices are growing louder by the hour, but on the other side, there's a completely different reaction. People who believe the incident is exactly what it appears to be, a direct consequence of leaking sensitive material, a warning, or worse, a retaliation. They argue that in industries where power and reputation matter, exposing the wrong information can come with real consequences. And to them, the silence from 50 Cent isn't confusion. It's seriousness. This isn't internet drama, this is real-world pressure. You don't just leak sensitive material and expect no response. Actions have consequences. And just like that, the conversation splits into two completely opposing narratives. One group believes this is being exaggerated or misunderstood, yet the other believes this is exactly what it looks like, and possibly even more serious than what's been reported. Meanwhile, social media platforms are flooded with breakdowns, reactions, and debates. Hashtags begin trending. Hashtag 50 Cent incident, hashtag documentary leak, hashtag what really happened. Each tag filled with thousands of posts trying to make sense of the situation. Some users are analyzing timelines, others are comparing clips. Some are even attempting to correlate the leak with the alleged incident minute by minute. But despite all the effort, no single version of the truth has been universally accepted. Industry voices have also begun to weigh in, though cautiously. Commentators, analysts, and content creators are discussing the broader implications rather than the specific incident. And many are focusing on one key question. What happens when unreleased or sensitive content becomes public before its intended release? One industry commentator stated, "The moment content crosses certain boundaries, it stops being just content. It becomes a liability." Another added, "We're entering a space where leaks don't just affect views, they may trigger real-world reactions." These perspectives are shifting the conversation away from gossip and towards something more serious, a discussion about responsibility, about control, and about consequences in a digital age where information spreads faster than ever. At the same time, some fans are defending 50 Cent fiercely, pointing to his history of controversy as proof that he's no stranger to pressure. To them, this situation feels like another attempt to silence or intimidate someone who consistently challenges the status quo. But critics argue the opposite, that this situation highlights the risks of pushing certain boundaries too far. And the divide between these two perspectives continues to grow. Even within fan communities, discussions are becoming heated. Some users are questioning whether they should continue supporting the documentary at all if the surrounding circumstances are unclear. Others are more concerned about the safety implications tied to the incident itself. And through all of this, one thing remains consistent: uncertainty. No confirmed details. No comprehensive statement. No final version of the truth. Just fragments of information being pieced together by the public in real time. And that lack of clarity is fueling speculation at every level. Because in situations like this, when official communication is minimal, the narrative is shaped by whoever speaks the loudest, or whoever leaks the most compelling information. And right now, the loudest voices are coming from social media, not official channels, which means the story is still being written in real time, with no clear ending in sight. And as long as that remains the case, public reaction will continue to evolve. More theories will emerge, more debates will form, and the pressure surrounding the situation will only continue to build. Because at this stage, people aren't just reacting to what happened. They're trying to understand what it means, and whether this is an isolated incident or the beginning of something much bigger. And the longer the silence continues, the more intense that question becomes. Just when the conversation seemed to reach a plateau, when theories were exhausted, debates were ongoing, and no new confirmations were coming in, a new development surfaced, and it didn't come from social media, it didn't come from commentators, it came from something far more official-looking. A partial internal memo reportedly linked to individuals connected to 50 Cent's broader team began circulating among select insiders. At first glance, it looked routine, nothing dramatic. But buried inside the document were references that immediately caught attention. Because instead of focusing on the incident itself, the memo appeared to address risk management around unreleased content. And that alone raised eyebrows. And why would internal documentation shift focus so quickly to content protection unless there was concern about further exposure? But the most shocking part wasn't the document itself. It was a line that appeared near the bottom. All remaining segments must remain restricted until further notice. External exposure has already resulted in unforeseen escalation. Unforeseen escalation. That phrase alone sent the internet into overdrive, because it indirectly acknowledges that something released previously may have contributed to what followed. And that opens the door to a much bigger implication. Was the leak a trigger? Or simply the tipping point of something already building behind the scenes? Now here's where the final twist begins to take shape. Because according to a source claiming familiarity with the documentary's internal structure, there is still at least one segment that has not been referenced publicly. Not leaked, not discussed, not even hinted at clearly. A segment described as contextual footage tied to sensitive interactions. No further explanation, no clarity on who or what is involved, but enough detail to suggest that the documentary may contain material that goes beyond general storytelling. Material that could involve real individuals in real situations that have not yet been disclosed. And if that segment exists, it may explain why the reaction to the earlier leak was so intense. Because even partial exposure could be seen as a threat by those who appear in the unreleased material. Now, on adding another layer to this, multiple independent sources have begun suggesting that the investigation into the incident is still ongoing. No confirmed conclusions, no public report, just ongoing inquiries behind the scenes. And that raises a critical question: if authorities or involved parties are still reviewing what happened, does that mean the full picture hasn't been seen yet? Or are there elements still being uncovered that the public doesn't know about? Meanwhile, silence continues from 50 Cent, and that silence is now being interpreted in multiple ways. Some see it as strategic, others see it as precautionary, and some believe it indicates that legal or procedural processes may already be in motion behind the scenes. But without confirmation, everything remains speculative. And that's what makes this situation so unpredictable. Because every new piece of information doesn't resolve the narrative, it expands it. At this stage, there are now 3 overlapping threads: the alleged incident and its unclear circumstances, the leaked documentary content and its implications, the internal responses and documents hinting at escalation and containment. Each one connects, but none are fully explained, and that leaves the audience in a constant state of anticipation. Because the more details that surface, the more questions emerge, and the fewer answers we get. Now, the most important unanswered question remains: what happens next? Will the full documentary be released? Will additional footage leak? Will there be an official statement addressing the incident in detail? Or will everything remain fragmented, with each new leak adding another layer of confusion? And at this point, the situation is still unfolding. No definitive conclusion has been reached. No single version of events has been fully confirmed. And the next development could come from anywhere. A new leak, a statement, a legal update, or even something unexpected that shifts the narrative entirely. Because if there's one thing this situation has proven so far, it's that it evolves quickly and unpredictably, and whatever happens next will likely reshape the conversation once again. So while the current moment may feel like a pause, it's not an ending, it's a transition. And the next phase could be the most revealing yet. Now the question is, after everything that's been revealed so far, where do you stand in this? Do you believe what happened to 50 Cent was simply an unfortunate incident that got blown out of proportion? Or do you think this was something far more intentional? Something triggered by the leaked documentary content? Because right now, the internet is split right down the middle. One side believes this was a clear warning, a consequence of exposing the wrong information at the wrong time. The other side believes there's still missing context, that what we've seen so far doesn't tell the full story. And honestly, both sides have arguments that are hard to ignore. But here's what makes this situation even more interesting. We still don't have the full picture. There are unanswered questions, unconfirmed details, and pieces of the puzzle that haven't surfaced yet. So I want to hear from you. Do you think the documentary leak triggered everything? Or do you think the incident and the leak are unrelated events being connected by speculation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't just give a one-word answer. Explain your reasoning. Because this is one of those situations where perspectives matter. Also, if you're watching this till the end, make sure to hit the like button so more people can see this story and join the discussion. And if you want to stay updated on this situation, because it's clearly not over, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the moment new footage leaks, the moment an official statement drops, or if there's any new development in this case, then we'll break it down immediately. And trust me, whatever comes next in this story could change everything we think we know so far. Stay tuned, because this is far from finished.